What would you do if your own sister pretended to be dying just to steal your father's inheritance? I never thought I'd say this, but my little sister, my childhood best friend, the girl I once defended from bullies, looked me in the eye and told me she had terminal cancer. I held her hand, I cried with her. I even offered to give up my share of our dad's will so she wouldn't have to spend her final months stressing about money. But what I didn't know was that she was lying. She wasn't dying. She wasn't even sick. She just wanted the money. And by the time I realized the truth, half the family was already calling me selfish for not supporting her. But I didn't stay silent. I started digging. And what I uncovered, it didn't just destroy her lies, it turned everyone against her. Before we go any deeper, make sure to subscribe and like this video if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. And drop a comment below. What's the biggest lie someone ever told you to get what they wanted? Let me tell you what happened next. My name is Sophia. I'm 30 years old. And until a few months ago, I thought I understood what betrayal looked like. I thought betrayal was cheating spouses, backstabbing coworkers, maybe a toxic friend or two. I never imagined it would come from my own sister, the one person I spent my entire life defending, protecting, and loving without conditions. Her name is Lily. She's 27, soft-spoken, delicate, the kind of girl everyone naturally wants to protect. Growing up, she'd always been the baby of the family, and I was the strong one. When our parents divorced, I wiped her tears. When she got dumped in college, I drove 6 hours just to sit on the floor of her dorm room and hold her while she cried. I never thought she'd turn that softness into a weapon. I never imagined she'd use it against me. Our father passed away late last year after a long battle with heart disease. He was a good man, quiet, hardworking, old school. He wasn't rich, but he left behind a small estate, some savings, a modest house, and a life insurance policy. He'd always made it clear that everything would be split equally between Lily and me, and I never once questioned that until she got sick. It started slowly. Lily calling to say she was exhausted, that she was seeing specialists, that the doctors found something suspicious in her scans. At first, I panicked. I dropped everything to be there for her. Appointments, hospital visits, second opinions. She cried in my arms, telling me she had cancer, stage 4, terminal. The words shook me to my core. She looked so small lying in that hospital bed, wrapped in blankets, hooked up to IVs. My heart broke. I promised her I'd do anything she needed, anything. She didn't even have to ask. Then came the conversations about the inheritance. She didn't bring it up directly at first, just little comments. It's not like I'll be around to enjoy it. Or you'll have your whole life, Sophia. I just want to make the most of the time I have. I was emotional, vulnerable. I didn't think twice when I told her I'd sign over my half of Dad's estate if it helped her live comfortably during her final months. She cried and hugged me. I cried too. I thought I was doing the right thing. But something didn't sit right. There were inconsistencies, missed appointments, vague test results. And her social media, she didn't look like someone dying. No weight loss, no signs of chemo. She was out with friends, drinking wine, posting selfies. I tried to justify it. Maybe she was just trying to live normally. But the doubt wouldn't leave me alone. That's when I made the choice. Not out of spite, not even out of anger, just a gut feeling. I started digging. And what I found, it changed everything. I didn't want to believe it. I honestly didn't. But something about Lily's behavior didn't align with what she told me. People battling terminal cancer don't usually spend weekends wine tasting or taking yoga classes in the park. I told myself maybe she was just putting on a brave face, but it started to feel like a performance. And performances have scripts. Scripts have holes. The first real red flag came when I called the hospital she claimed she was being treated at. I wasn't trying to invade her privacy. I was trying to schedule something for her, a support service I thought might help. But when I asked for her oncologist, the woman on the other end of the line said something that chilled me. "I'm sorry, but we have no patient by that name in our oncology department." I froze. I repeated Lily's full name, asked if she could check again, nothing. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed proof, solid, undeniable proof. So I kept playing along, supporting her, listening to her updates. Meanwhile, I dug deeper. I found out the medication she claimed to be taking wasn't even prescribed to her. The treatment bills she'd shown me were doctored, literally fake documents created using a free online template. I cross-referenced phone numbers, addresses, even the name of the doctor she mentioned. Eh, none of it was real. My heart broke in a completely different way this time. She hadn't just lied, she'd faked cancer, our worst fear, the thing that had stolen our father, to manipulate me out of my inheritance, out of his house, his savings, his life insurance, all so she could live comfortably while spinning this cruel fantasy. Still, part of me hoped there was a better explanation. Maybe she'd panicked. Maybe she really was sick but didn't want to share the full truth. I gave her one final chance. We met for lunch. I sat across from her, trying to keep my hands from shaking. She looked radiant, hair done, glowing skin, cheerful as ever. I asked gentle questions. How was her last scan? What was the treatment plan? Who was her oncologist again? And that's when she cracked. She got defensive, evasive. She contradicted herself 3 times in one sentence. And then I dropped it. The name of the doctor I called, the hospital that didn't know her, the prescription list that didn't exist, her face drained of color. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she whispered, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stood up, heart pounding. You conned me. You faked cancer to steal Dad's inheritance. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. She wasn't sick. She was a liar. And now it was time the rest of the family knew the truth. The ride home from that lunch was a blur. I don't even remember the streets or the traffic. All I remember is the way my hands gripped the steering wheel like I was trying to hold my life together. My sister, my flesh and blood, had weaponized our father's death. She had turned grief into a con, and I had fallen for it. But I wasn't going to be silent anymore. That night, I gathered every piece of evidence I had, screenshots, email threads, copies of her fake hospital bills, notes from my calls to the oncology department. I laid them out like puzzle pieces across the dining table where Dad used to sit, his chair still untouched after all these months. I felt sick, betrayed, but I also felt something else rising in my chest, clarity and a quiet kind of rage. I called a family meeting, my uncle, aunt, and a few cousins, people who had been manipulated into sending Lily money, offering support, even changing parts of the estate plan in her favor. They were all under the impression that Lily didn't have long to live, that she deserved compassion and resources and space to prepare for the end. When they arrived, I didn't waste time. I opened my laptop and started going through the documents one by one. There was disbelief at first. A few of them even defended her. She wouldn't do that, not Lily. But as the pieces came together, I saw the shift in their faces. Horror, anger, sadness. She faked everything, I said quietly. Dad's life insurance, his watch collection, even the deed to the lake house. She forged my signature and claimed I agreed to give it to her. Someone whispered, "That's a crime." Nodded, "And I'm going to report it." Before I went to the authorities, I gave Lily one last chance to make it right. I sent her a message. You have 24 hours to return what you took and confess to the family. If you don't, I'm pressing charges. Her reply was ice cold. Do what you have to do. So I did. I filed a formal complaint, fraud, forgery, identity theft. I handed over everything. The detective assigned to the case was stunned. We've seen a lot, but this level of manipulation within a family, it's rare. It didn't take long for things to move. The documents she'd faked left a paper trail. Bank transfers, property deeds, even some of the money she claimed was for treatment had been used to renovate her kitchen. It wasn't just deception, it was calculated theft. And as the truth came out, the sympathy she'd milked from everyone turned into disgust. Friends cut ties, extended family blocked her. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was the villain of her own story. But for me, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about my father, about protecting what he left behind, about honoring his memory with truth instead of manipulation. Still, I couldn't help but grieve, not for the money or the house or the things she took, but for the sister I thought I had. The court date came faster than I expected. Sitting on that cold wooden bench, listening to the charges read aloud, I kept glancing at Lily, wondering if even now some part of her regretted it. But she didn't look ashamed. She didn't even look nervous. She just sat there with her arms crossed, face blank, like this was all some kind of inconvenience. That hurt more than I cared to admit. When the judge asked her how she pled, she said, "Not guilty," without blinking. I felt my stomach tighten. Even with all the evidence, all the people she'd lied to, she was still clinging to the story she'd built, still performing, still pretending. But this time, the truth had backup. One by one, witnesses came forward. My uncle testified about the money he sent her. My cousin described helping her set up a fake GoFundMe for experimental treatment. Even my dad's lawyer took the stand, confirming that the signature on the property transfer didn't match mine because I had never signed it. Then came the financial forensics, the records of bank transfers, the paper trail of real estate documents, the forged emails. It was damning. Lily's lawyer tried to spin it, claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she was emotionally unstable after Dad's death and confused about what was hers, but it didn't work, not this time. I didn't take the stand until the final day. I was nervous, sure, but I spoke from the heart. I loved my sister, I said. I still do in some way. But love doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean letting someone erase the truth or steal from the people who trusted her. My father spent his whole life building something for us. Lily turned that into a lie. And I'm here because someone had to protect what's right. When I stepped down, the courtroom was silent. I didn't look at her as I passed. The judge took a few days to deliberate. Those were the longest days of my life. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every knock on the door made my heart pound. I wasn't afraid of the outcome. I just wanted it to be over. When the verdict came, it was a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Guilty on multiple counts: fraud, forgery, attempted theft. She avoided jail time, but only barely. The judge ordered restitution and mandated therapy plus community service. The court also ruled to restore my legal ownership of the lake house and assets she had tried to claim. Afterward, she refused to look at me, walked right past me in the hallway like I was a stranger, and maybe at that point I was. But here's the thing about lies: they unravel slowly, painfully, sometimes all at once. Lily thought she could play on emotion forever, that people would pity her, protect her, bend the truth to avoid conflict, but lies don't protect, they destroy. And the only thing I regret is not calling them out sooner. That night, I drove to the lake house alone. It was quiet, still wrapped in the silence Dad always loved. I sat on the porch with a mug of tea, looking out over the water, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed. Not in anger, not in fear, just peace. She almost stole everything my father left behind, but in the end, she lost everything that mattered. The weeks after the verdict felt like emotional whiplash. I had won, legally, publicly, morally, but it didn't feel like a victory. Not really. What do you do when justice is served, but the person you once trusted the most still walks the earth, unrepentant and unreachable? Every time someone said, "You must be so relieved," I just smiled politely. What was I supposed to say? That my heart still ached? That I sometimes scrolled through old childhood photos of us laughing in the sprinkler, building blanket forts, sharing secrets in the dark, and wondered where that version of Lily went? That I'd catch myself wanting to text her something funny before remembering who she became? People assume closure is clean, that once the gavel hits, everything inside you settles. But in real life, closure is messy. It's slow. It comes in pieces, sometimes in courtrooms, sometimes in silence. Lily's restitution payment started coming in a month later. Small amounts monitored by the court. I didn't need the money. What I needed was acknowledgement. But each check felt cold, like a receipt for pain. I didn't cash them right away. They sat in a drawer for weeks before I finally deposited one, hands trembling, as if doing so meant accepting that this was all I'd get. I didn't speak to her again, not by choice. She vanished from the family radar, blocked everyone, changed her number, moved out of state. My mother said she heard Lily was starting over somewhere in Arizona, working at a yoga studio and living in some tiny apartment with her dog. I hoped it was true, not because I forgave her yet, but because I needed to believe she was doing something honest for once. As for me, I poured myself into the lake house. I cleaned it from top to bottom, repainted the trim, repaired the dock. Every nail I hammered, every floorboard I scrubbed felt like reclaiming a piece of the love that was almost stolen. I found a box in the attic, one Lily hadn't touched, full of Dad's old things, a baseball glove, a cigar box of Polaroids, a few letters he never sent. One was addressed to both of us. I opened it with shaking hands. He wrote about how proud he was of us, how different we were, and how he hoped we'd always have each other. He said the lake house wasn't just a home, it was a legacy, a reminder that we came from something real, something rooted, and that no matter what happened, he trusted us to honor it. I cried for hours after reading that letter, cried for the little girls who used to jump off that dock together, cried for the man who believed in us both, cried for the fact that love, once twisted by greed, never quite returns to its original shape. But I also felt a kind of strength I hadn't known before. I'd faced betrayal, I'd stood alone in the storm, and I hadn't just survived, I'd protected what mattered. That fall, I hosted Thanksgiving at the lake house, just a few close friends and relatives. It was quiet, intimate. We lit a fire, passed plates, shared memories. For the first time in years, the house felt warm again. Someone asked about Lily. I just shook my head and said, she's not part of this story anymore. And I meant it. Winter came early that year. Snow fell thick and quiet across the lake, blanketing the house in a kind of silence I hadn't heard since childhood. I spent most mornings wrapped in a blanket near the fireplace, sipping coffee, watching the water freeze over inch by inch. I thought about Dad a lot during those days, about what he would say if he saw how things turned out. Part of me hoped he'd be proud. Part of me feared he'd be heartbroken. But mostly I just missed him. The lake house became a kind of sanctuary, not just for me, but for others. Friends came to visit, some who hadn't seen me in years. We cooked meals together, told old stories, laughed until our stomachs hurt. One night, as I sat on the porch watching the snowfall, my friend Maya turned to me and said, "You know, it's like this place is healing you." She was right. The walls no longer echoed with Lily's lies or Dad's absence. They breathed again. Slowly, carefully, I started to rebuild. Not just the house, but myself. I started journaling every night. Therapy helped too, not the kind where you sit in silence and nod, but the kind that cracks you open and forces you to examine the wreckage. I faced a hard tooth. Lily had always struggled with jealousy, but I'd spent most of our lives minimizing her behavior to keep the peace. I let her hurt me in small ways for years because I didn't want to believe she was capable of hurting me in big ones. But she was, and she did. One afternoon in February, I got a letter from Lily. It was handwritten, 4 pages long, sent from a post office box in Sedona. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands shook, my heart raced. Part of me didn't want to know what she had to say. But curiosity and closure are dangerous twins. The letter was strange, apologetic, but not entirely. She admitted to lying, to forging documents, to pretending to be sick, but she justified it all with years of resentment. "You were always the favorite," she wrote. "Even when I tried to be good, it was never enough." There it was, the confession, but not the remorse. She said she hoped I could move on, that she was working on herself, that maybe someday we could talk. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the drawer with the checks. I didn't respond because I had already moved on, and I didn't owe her anything more than that. In March, I finally scattered some of Dad's ashes at the edge of the lake, just a small handful, right where he used to sit with his fishing rod and Hume Old Country songs. I whispered goodbye, not just to him, but to the version of me that still waited for Lily to be someone she wasn't. And as the wind picked up and carried the ashes across the water, I felt something leave me, not pain, not anger, just weight. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was free. Spring crept in like a quiet promise. The snow melted in slow, heavy sighs, dripping from the roof and pooling around the porch. Trees budded, the lake thawed, and with every change in the landscape, I felt something thawing in me too. Like the cold that had lived in my chest for months was finally willing to leave. I'd been living at the lake house for 6 months by then. What started as an escape became a kind of rebirth. I painted the guest room, hung curtains, learned how to fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. Something mine. Something Dad would have been proud of. People from town started to stop by more often. Mrs. Callahan brought fresh pies. A neighbor named James helped me patch the dock. We weren't close, not yet, but there was warmth in those visits, a sense that I wasn't as alone as I used to be. And I let that warmth in. Then, one morning, a phone call shattered the peace. It was from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. "Sophia?" the voice asked, hesitant. "It's Lily." For a second, I couldn't speak. I just froze. She sounded tired, older. There was no trace of her usual arrogance, just silence and then a quiet breath. "I'm not calling to fight," she said. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sick. Actually sick this time." I didn't know what to say. I dreamed of this moment, of her reaching out, of me having the power to hang up, walk away, say nothing. But the voice on the other end wasn't the villain I'd built in my head. It was my sister, the same girl who used to braid my hair and steal my clothes and make me laugh so hard I cried. "Stage 3 lymphoma," she said. "I just started treatment." I sat down on the edge of the bed. My heart raced, my thoughts tangled. Part of me didn't believe her. How could I? After everything she faked, everything she forged, but there was something in her voice I hadn't heard in years. Fear. Real, raw fear. "I'm not asking for anything," she continued. I didn't want you to hear it from someone else." The line went quiet, and I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing I could. "I hope you get better." That was it. That was the whole conversation. And yet it haunted me. For days, I walked around with a storm inside me. Anger, grief, guilt, relief. I didn't trust her, but I also couldn't bring myself to hate her anymore. Not fully, not when she was sick, not when death was sitting at her doorstep the way it had once sat at ours. But I didn't reach out again, not yet, not until I knew what was real. So I did what I always do. I started looking for the truth. And what I found next would change everything. I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But after everything Lily had done, faking cancer, forging documents, manipulating our family, trusting her without proof felt like playing with fire again. So I made a few calls. The first one was to Dr. Rao's office, the oncologist she claimed to be seeing. I wasn't expecting them to say much, but I explained that I was her sister and that I had concerns given her previous history. The receptionist paused for a moment, then said something that chilled me. "I'm sorry, but there's no patient by that name in our system," and hung up without another word. My hands were shaking. I told myself maybe she was going somewhere else, maybe she lied about the doctor's name out of habit, but that old feeling, the one I'd worked so hard to shed, came crashing back. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the web of half-truths and control. I was back in it. I called our cousin Becca, the only family member still in occasional contact with Lily. "Have you talked to her?" I asked. Becca sighed. "She called last week, said she was doing chemo, but she looked fine. No hair loss, no weight change. She even asked me for a loan, said the treatment was expensive." There it was, the playbook all over again. I felt the old rage rise in my throat. I wanted to scream. How could she do this again after everything? But I also felt something else. Heartbreak. Because this time, I wasn't angry just for me. I was angry for her too. For the broken, desperate person she'd become. So addicted to sympathy and control that even real illness couldn't teach her truth. And then I made a decision. I sent her one final message. "Lily, if you are truly sick, I wish you strength and healing. But if this is another lie, I won't be part of it. I love the sister you used to be. I miss her every day. But I can't keep losing pieces of myself to chase the girl you've become." She didn't reply. Instead, 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Lily. A real handwritten letter, no manipulation, no theatrics, just 4 pages of tangled honesty. She admitted it, all of it, that she lied again, that she wasn't sick, that after I exposed her, she lost nearly every friend she had, that her finances were a mess, that she burned bridges she couldn't rebuild, and that pretending to be sick again was a way to feel needed, important, even if it was twisted. She ended the letter like this: I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to finally tell the truth once. You're the only person who ever held me accountable, and the only one I still wish I hadn't lost. I cried reading it, not because I forgave her. I wasn't there yet, but because for the first time in years, I felt like she was looking in the mirror and actually seeing herself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something real. I folded the letter and put it in my journal, not to forget, but to remember that even the deepest betrayals don't have to define you. The final part of this story was still unwritten, and I was finally ready to turn the page. The day of the final hearing arrived quietly, without drama. No last-minute twists, no grand entrance from Lily, just me, my lawyer, and the weight of every decision I'd made since this nightmare began. I sat there, listening as the judge summarized the case. He noted the forged documents, the false medical claims, the statements from friends and family. My sister wasn't present, but her actions echoed in every word spoken in that courtroom. When the gavel fell, it was over. The inheritance was split exactly as my father intended. The judge ruled that Lily had attempted fraud and that her manipulation of the family trust warranted her removal from financial authority. The lawyer looked at me with quiet pride. You did it, he whispered. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. Like I had finally put down a burden I'd been carrying since the day I realized my sister had turned something sacred, our father's memory, into a tool for control. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath and let the sun warm my face. It wasn't just the end of a legal battle. It was the end of letting someone else write my story. I went home and lit a candle next to my father's photo. I told him out loud, I kept my promise. Because I had. I protected what he left behind. Not just the money, but the meaning, the love, the dignity. Lily and I haven't spoken since her letter. I haven't reached out and she hasn't tried again. Maybe one day we'll find a new chapter, one built on truth. Or maybe this was the closure we both needed. Either way, I've made peace with it. I've learned that sometimes justice doesn't come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's quiet, a moment of stillness after years of chaos, a clean page, a name cleared, a truth finally seen. And if you're still listening, maybe you've been there too. Betrayed by someone you trusted, manipulated by someone who was supposed to protect you. If this story resonates with you, know this: you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you're not powerless. If this story meant something to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you've ever had to fight for your truth, drop a comment below. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you get to choose how your story ends. Let it be on your terms.